So when you're thinking about yourself as an entrepreneur and you're thinking about your ideal client, this is an opportunity for them to learn who you are and how you can help them. And if you're not using this opportunity to do that, you're sort of missing out. And so the number one thing I see that people skip over is that summary section. So it's kind of like your photo and your title are on the top, and then there's a summary section before you get to the experience section. And people tend to skip over that and not write a summary. And to me, I think that's just such a missed opportunity.
Get ready to build, protect, and sell your expertise online with the Online Genius Podcast. You'll laugh. We hope you won't cry, but you'll always be informed and prepared so you can have the success you want. Here's your host, Bobby Klink.
Hey there. Welcome to this week's episode of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink. And I'm excited for today's show because we're going to be tackling an issue that I have to admit I struggle with. We've covered it before in this show, and I still continue to struggle with it. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how to use LinkedIn as an entrepreneur. Now, I hear people talk about LinkedIn, and you'll remember back on episode number 12, I talked to Phil Gerbishak about LinkedIn and social selling. But I have to admit, I haven't done anything to improve my LinkedIn game since talking to Phil because I still was kind of like, I don't know. And I spent my time on Facebook and I'm working on my Instagram game. But I said, this is a topic that's important. And I know for my listeners, it's something we definitely need to take care of. So I wanted to bring on another expert to really give us a step-by-step guide on what we should be doing on LinkedIn. And so today we are joined by Rebecca Vertucci. Rebecca is a proven expert on recruiting, hiring, social media marketing, and all things LinkedIn. Her distinguished career began as a recruiter in New York City before moving to a director of career services role within higher education. Now, as part of her role as a senior customer success manager at LinkedIn, did you hear that? She works for LinkedIn. She consults with recruitment teams for global companies on how to use LinkedIn, trains them on the development of their hiring, marketing, social media, and employer brand strategy needs. She's also the founder of the Vertucci Group and Career Academy. She shares her extensive knowledge and unique perspective with recruiters, hiring managers, career professionals, and entrepreneurs through her online course offerings, workshops, public speaking, and coaching programs. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could have found a better expert to give us a step-by-step guide. So welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, Rebecca.
Thanks so much for having me, and thank you so much for that introduction.
Now, look, I'm hoping you will actually get me motivated to get up off of my rear and, up my LinkedIn game. But I always like to ask guests some personal things or a little bit personal before we get into the subject. Great. And in preparing for today's show, you told me that you appeared on the Wheel of Fortune.
Sure did.
I want to hear about that. What was that like and what was your experience?
Absolutely. I've been a fan of Wheel of Fortune my entire life. I always knew as a kid that I would be a contestant on that show one day. It was like one of those dreams that I never let go of. And when I turned 18, I started applying online, but never hearing back. And honestly, 13 years went by and I was starting to be really begrudging about the fact that I was never getting notified about the Wheelmobile when they were in my town, why nobody was calling me for an audition. But one day I got this email because I was on a fan list where they said they were going to be coming to Brooklyn, which is where I lived at the time, and that they were going to be doing a Face of the Fan contest. And they asked fans to submit a 1-minute video about why they were fans of the show and why they would be great contestants. And I went and recorded my video right away and had it uploaded, I swear to you, within 45 minutes. And from that video, I got invited to audition. And so I auditioned in Brooklyn. And it's, people always ask me, what's it like to audition for Wheel of Fortune? And it's sort of exactly what you would think that it would be. You kind of go to this room for the day and you're there all day and there's hundreds of people, but you're asked to do things like speak in front of the group and talk a little bit about yourself. You're asked to do some puzzles, like word puzzles, so that they understand that you know how to do word puzzles. And then you do mock rounds of the game. And so I was there all day, auditioning, made it through all the cuts. And they don't tell you right away. You get a letter in the mail. First of all, I want to share that audition happened for me on December 5th of 2012, which was the same day I got the offer for LinkedIn. I had been interviewing for months and I got to audition on December 5th and I got the call that I had gotten the job on December 5th. So I'll never forget that day.
That's a good day.
It was a good day. It was a good day. And then a few weeks later, right around the holidays, I got the email that I was selected. And basically that puts you into a pool of people that they will call upon for casting to do the show. And I got selected to go out to Vegas and do a week of episodes that were about the new year, ringing in the new year. It was really one of those out-of-body experiences that sometimes I still think back to and I'm like, did that really happen to me? But it was really amazing. I was at a sound studio for the day with, a bunch of other contestants. They go through all of these rules and practicing with you. There's hair and makeup and kind of all the things that you would expect, but you're actually not allowed to really interact with any of the producers or the hosts, Vanna or Pat, because of regulations and laws that have been put in place for they don't want the producers or the hosts favoring any one contestant. I guess that happened back in the 70s. What?
From Quiz Show, that movie
yes, exactly. So all of those 70s and 80s shady things that happened. But it was still so exactly what you see on TV is exactly what happens. There's no extra interaction until all the shows are recorded and you get to go say hi and get an autograph. But what I'll say is it was 17 minutes of my life that were filmed. I did not come in first. Came in second, but I won $18,000. It was amazing. I had the best time. And it was, for me, one of those things I knew one day would be possible. So the day that it happened, I was like, oh my God, I can create anything in my life. If I created this and this came true, I can create anything.
Well, so I've got to ask you this, and I'm hoping the answer is no. But okay, so when I watch that show, I am not good at it. My brother-in-law is decent at it, but I'm not. But sometimes you watch it and you're like, oh, this is so obvious. Why are you missing it? Did you have one of those moments or no?
I did. I buzzed in for one of those quick rounds.
Okay.
And I solved what I thought was the puzzle, and it was really close. And it was something like, oh God, you always remember. It's funny what you remember, don't remember. It was something like All-Star Cast was the puzzle, and I said All-Star Game. And I was wrong. So that wasn't as bad as some things that you see on that show that are so obvious, but you buzz in really quickly and you don't have a lot of letters. And I was like, why wouldn't I think it was an all-star cast? That was so silly. I can't believe that. There are a couple of things like that. I love the show and I'm really, not to brag, but very good at it. I'm that type of person who can have a couple of letters and bam, I have it. But what happens that I think people don't realize when you're watching from home is that you have a bunch of cameras on you, a bunch of lights, and things go very quickly. Yep. So it's really the pressure that makes it harder for you to do things as quickly as you would be able to do them if you were sitting at home on your couch.
Yeah, no, and I recognize when they have one of those moments, it's not because I'm better at this than they are, because of the pressure or whatever. And we've all had that happen in various places. But that's enough about Wheel of Fortune. I think we need to start talking about LinkedIn.
For sure.
But before we start with really kind of what is going to be the bulk of our talk, where you're going to give us some really good kind of what to do, what not to do, we need to start with the why. Why should someone like me or some other entrepreneur be on LinkedIn? Isn't it just to go find a job?
I love that question. I'm really glad that we're starting here. Now, I've worked for LinkedIn for 6 years, but I've been training on LinkedIn pretty much my entire career. When you think about recruitment and career services, everyone who is looking for work needs to be on LinkedIn. So to your point, that's the obvious reason that you go to the site. But I think have been a lot of transitions over the past, I would say 7 to 8 years that I think go a little bit unnoticed because LinkedIn did start as a professional sort of job seeker, social networking. I don't know that its perception has really caught up to its reality. And the reality is that it's a social platform like all the other social platforms that we're trying to conquer as entrepreneurs. It has 600 million members and it's global. And people are on there for very similar reasons as they are on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. It's really about social connection, building relationships, engaging with content. The major difference with LinkedIn is that it's all about professional business relationships and professional business content. And so you're not going to see, a lot of that personal stuff or even like political stuff or advertising in the same exact way that you see on a lot of other social platforms, but it is just as powerful. And I think it is very underutilized, very undertapped. And if I were to quote Gary Vaynerchuk, he's out there talking about LinkedIn all the time right now because it's like nobody's using it and everybody should be. And I sort of feel that way for entrepreneurs because there's so much opportunity and it's very untapped right now. This is the right time to be thinking about how your business can have visibility on this platform because it's going to continue to grow, continue to have engagement, but there aren't enough people taking advantage of it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people. I have an account. And I think part of my problem is I think of it as the stuffy suit and tie social network.
Sure.
And I think that's probably not right, but that's how I think about it. But how much, when someone's on LinkedIn, what are they normally doing? How are they interacting when they're on LinkedIn?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I will say your perception is not completely off. It is a very corporate business professional market. But when you think about corporations, when you think about business professionals, it looks very different today than it even did 10 or 15 years ago. Professionals in the workplace wear a lot of different hats, look at a lot of different ways, right? So there's a couple of things that I would say. Sorry, Bobby, ask your question again.
Well, so what I was wondering is how does a typical person
use the site data?
Yeah, I mean, are they scrolling through the feed or are they in groups? What are they normally doing, at least the people who are active on LinkedIn?
Yeah, no, the behavior, perfect. So the number one thing is actually staying connected and building relationships. So the number one activity that we see on the LinkedIn platform is searching for members, viewing member profiles, connecting with members, which makes sense. It's social, right? But what's a little different for social connection on LinkedIn, as an example, versus Instagram, Twitter, et cetera, on those other platforms as entrepreneurs, we're trying to get followers and we're trying to get likes and we're trying to get people to see our content in volume and at scale. LinkedIn is that more one-to-one relationship building platform. And so that's the number one activity. And I think the other reason why that's the number one activity is because there's so much rich data available to you on LinkedIn that you can learn about a member, learn about a potential connection or a business relationship that you really can't learn on other platforms. And so the information and insight that you can gain is much higher. That's the number one activity. The number two activity is actually content. So reading through and engaging with content. Now, our platform doesn't have the same number of unique daily logins as an Instagram does or as a Facebook does, and you don't have people logging in every single day. But when the active members are logging in, which about 75% of the 600 million are active, they're logging in on a weekly basis. They're usually logging in 2 or 3 times a week, and they're on for a much longer time. It's not a quick, I'm going to like this Instagram photo and move on. It's like, oh, I'm coming here intentionally. I'm coming here to seek out certain content. I'm coming here to find certain people and connect. And so you see that our engagement has a longer tail end than other social platforms, even if the volume is not as high as other social platforms.
Okay, that's interesting because that was always part of my thing is trying to understand. I think understanding how people use it affects what you're going to do. So with that, I think that's a good way to transition to kind of the 4, big tips or the 4 big steps you need to do to really utilize LinkedIn. And the first one that you kind of mentioned, you've got this PDF you put together that I'm looking at, and I thought was a great way of doing it, is to deal with your personal profile. So what do you need to be doing with your personal profile on LinkedIn?
So this is the key thing. If you do nothing else and if you take nothing else away from today's podcast, I think sometimes our personal profiles are overlooked as entrepreneurs on LinkedIn because we're thinking about our company page or our content or other things that we're doing that we're used to doing on, say, Facebook or Instagram. When you think about those platforms, you don't have to put a lot of effort into a personal profile in the same way that you have to do with LinkedIn. Because it's a social networking site and because people are viewing your profile before they connect with you or before they engage with you, your personal profile becomes sort of the story of who you are why they care, why they should read your message, why they should accept your connection request. And so your personal profile is the place to get started. And I'll say not only to share your brand, which we'll talk about mostly, but also so that people can find you. You know, the thing is, people are logging in, millions of people a week, looking for business professionals, looking for people to connect with. And if you have the right sort of robust profile with the right keywords, you can be found by people more easily than other platforms.
Okay, so let's talk about the components of
the profile.
LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, what do you need to do to build it out?
The number one thing and the most important thing is the photo. And I say that because it's the first thing that we see. It's immediately where our eyes go. It's the thing that's going to help us pay attention or not pay attention, decide to continue to learn more about you or not learn more about you. And so, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile photo, you might as well just, unfortunately, not even be on LinkedIn. But profiles that have photos are 21 times more likely to be viewed. It really creates that know, like, and trust factor. As entrepreneurs, we're probably using photos, professional photos of ourselves in other contexts. And you have to think of that as being like your strongest first introduction to somebody is that photo. And so it should be in brand with, whatever your business is, whatever you do as a professional. And it, while it might not need to be a professional photo taken by a professional photographer, it needs to look professional. It needs to be you looking your best, as if you were giving your TED Talk, as if you were speaking in front of your dream ideal clients. How would you look on that day? And that's what your personal profile photo needs to look like. And that's where you need to start.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I literally don't. I mean, when I'm scrolling through, if someone doesn't have a profile photo, I ignore it because I think we're all visual. So
right, you don't know if it's a real person. It's like it's a little untrustworthy to not have a photo on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, it's that, but it's also, I don't know about you, but when I'm scrolling through, for example, I don't know about you, but anytime I get a new connection and I accept it then has me look at these others, and I'll tend to scroll through. But I don't want to have to read. So I'm just scrolling through looking for pictures that I recognize or something else. So right. I think number one, you have to do that. But then number two, like you said, I mean, it just isn't going to be very trustworthy if you don't have it. So I think that's great advice. And again, look, every entrepreneur needs to have a good headshot. And so that's right. Pretty easy. You're going to need it, get it, and put it on LinkedIn.
It's not just for LinkedIn. It's for your life as an entrepreneur, for sure.
I mean, that's a no-brainer investment that you need. So you definitely need to do that.
No doubt. I get new professional photos taken every year. I use them in everything I do, all social, all platforms, all the time. I agree with you 100%. And the other thing I'll say, you mentioned when you're scrolling through, you look at the photo, that's where your eyes go. And then you said, and other things. And so the other place our eyes go to, and the other thing that's really important is actually called our headline or our title. That is sort of what people see when they're scrolling through, because they may or may not recognize you. Your face will be what draws them in, right? Your photo. But then they're going to look at that next level of information. And it usually is like the title that you're presenting as like the title of your profile. Now, the majority of LinkedIn members, it defaults to their current title at their current company. And so if you're currently employed, it might say account manager at LinkedIn. But that is actually customizable. It can say whatever you want it to say. And as an entrepreneur, I would think about a tagline or a piece of information or a title that is speaking to your ideal client. So that if you're scrolling in that feed and you're seeing somebody and you're like, oh, I am a legal expert for entrepreneurs, then that draws me in because I'm an entrepreneur. So whatever language you're using to speak to your ideal client needs to be at the very top of your profile in that headline right away to draw them in and get them hooked to reading more of your profile and learning more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I think that's great. And by the way, I'm editing my tagline right now with your advice.
Perfect.
So I think that's all great. What about, I don't even know what it's called, the image above your kind of whatever it is, your wallpaper, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the banner, the background image. Yeah.
That's something I got to be honest with you. I struggle with on all social media with what to do for my personal, my business. Okay, I can figure that out. But for my personal, what's the best way to go on that?
Well, I would look at the fact that even though this is your personal profile, this is your professional brand. And so LinkedIn is not a platform where we have to I will say where we won't be sharing photos and information about our family and our pets and our kids. Not even if that's a part of your brand, even as an entrepreneur, you're a lifestyle entrepreneur, LinkedIn is not that platform. It is going to be professional. And so when you think about that from a banner perspective, I think it helps a little bit to realize like, oh, I could still make a banner that is about my business, even though this is my personal profile, because we're going to still be drawing people in. I mean, you could just do like a fun image. Like I have a graffiti image that says LinkedIn New York. I haven't done anything with like my business per se, but I have seen profiles that I've really liked where people talk about the freebie, like their lead gen, where they talk about an upcoming webinar. When you think about that, how we're building banners for Facebook and for our Facebook groups and all of the things that we're already doing from a content perspective, you could use that image space in the same way if you wanted to.
Interesting. Okay. What are some of the biggest mistakes that people make with their personal profile on LinkedIn?
I think that the biggest mistake I see is really people being too sparse. I mean, we definitely talked about like not people that don't have a photo. I've also seen photos where like people have their entire family or they're sitting with their pet and look, if you have a business related to pets or related to children, that might be fine. But is it really the way that you want to use your profile picture? You have to think about that for your brand. What I'll say on the content side though of the profile, I think people tend to just be very sparse. Like they don't give enough information about who they are or what they do. So when you're thinking about yourself as an entrepreneur and you're thinking about your ideal client, this is an opportunity for them to learn who you are and how you can help them. And if you're not using this opportunity to do that, you're sort of missing out. And so the number one thing I see that people skip over is that summary section. So it's kind of like your photo and your title are on the top. And then there's a summary section before you get to the experience section. And people tend to skip over that and not write a summary. And to me, I think that's just such a missed opportunity. You could share kind of your ideal client language of who you help and how you serve them, what services and products you offer. You could drive people to a freebie or to your website. And if you're not doing that, they may or may not continue to scroll on your profile and look at the rest of it. But that's like right there at the top. It's right there at the front. And I think it's the best opportunity to get your story out there.
I think that's a great way to think about it. And is there anything else that we need to be thinking about when we're looking at our personal profile and thinking about what to include, what works, what doesn't work?
The only other thing I would add is you do have the opportunity on your profile to incorporate rich media. So like videos or PDFs throughout the summary, throughout the experience section, you can add different things. So if you already have content, if you already have a video on your website, or you have, again, these PDFs that we're driving people to for lead generation, I would encourage you to think about how you could incorporate that throughout your personal profile. Because again, while it's your personal profile, it is your professional brand. And it's the number one thing people are doing. People are viewing our profiles hundreds of times a month. And so we want to capture every opportunity we can to be driving them to our brand and to our information.
Okay. I think that's good advice. After let me ask you one other question about the personal profile. What about using things like, and I don't even know if this is still there, you could have expertise where you can say yes or no, people can include that. Is that important or not?
Endorsements and the
they can endorse you for different skills and things like that.
I don't think it's unimportant. I don't think it's important. I think it's one of those things that if I'm making a decision about who you are and whether or not I want to work for you, I might check it out. For every person who might check it out, other people would say they wouldn't check it out. I don't think there's a harm in having it. And what I would recommend is if people are endorsing you, to take a look at that section of your profile and to prioritize the skills that you would like to be endorsed for, because you can prioritize that yourself. It's auto-generated if you're not paying attention to it. I've heard people say to me, both like recruiters who are hiring professionals, but then also clients who are looking to hire entrepreneurs say, I look at that, and then I've heard people say, I don't look at it. So it's really not a right or wrong, but something to pay attention to and not to ignore. And if you don't find value in it, I would just take it off of your profile altogether. I would just not have it there as a section if you don't feel like it's, really valuable for you. But what I would say is, The recommendation piece, I think, is very key. So if you can get clients to recommend you and people that you've worked for, now that takes a little bit more effort because they have to write a recommendation for you, but it shows up on your profile, and it's the same thing as a testimonial section on your website. So I would encourage entrepreneurs to think about getting recommendations on their profile.
Yeah. And see, the reason I have to ask you the question is because as a lawyer, I have separate issues that there are some states that don't allow you to have the
endorsements.
Well, yeah, you can have the recommendations, but not the endorsements because it's suggesting that you have an expertise, and we're not allowed to say those things as lawyers. It's kind of ridiculous with these last
questions. So then I would turn that off.
Okay, so we talked about the personal profile. Then, your next tip is all about your company page. Why is your company page important?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about necessarily creating a company page. And there's a couple of reasons why I would recommend doing so. One is that if you have a company page set up and it has your logo and your information, and we'll talk about what things to include, you can actually link that and sync it to your profile. So like when you add your experience as a business owner, as a coach, as a speaker onto your personal profile, you can sync it to a company page and have the logo come through. And again, that's continuing to perpetuate the brand, perpetuate the ecosystem, right? And if you do that, then people, if they're like, oh, what is this company? They can go, they can check it out. If you don't have a company page and you're like, I'm a coach at Rebecca Vertucci, LLC, that's fine. You can do that, but there will be no logo. There won't be any sort of graphic drawing people to want to learn more about that. And it won't be a part of the ecosystem. And you do want to think of LinkedIn as an ecosystem because people tend to find you or find your business in multiple different ways. They could have found you through scrolling and like look at your personal profile, then click into your logo of your company and then go learn about your company. Or you could post a piece of content from your company page and then they would go and they would learn about you. It's all an ecosystem. It all feeds each other. And so I do think as business owners, it's important for us to have a company page so that it's sort of like our website, right? Like if you have a business, you might be on Facebook and have a Facebook profile company page, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a website, right? And it's sort of the difference between those two things. Like your company page is going to be where they learn about your company, your products, your services, and can drive to several different pieces of content that you have. You can do status updates. So for me, I think why this is the number 2 tip I give is because you want to be meeting people where they are. You want to be thinking about your ideal client. And there might be a lot of people, and there are a lot of people on LinkedIn who are doing research and looking at content. And if you're driving back to a company page, you can capture them in a way that maybe you wouldn't capture them if all that you had was your personal profile.
Mm-hmm. I think that's useful. And I agree with you. I've never understood people who think that you don't need to have a website. Still, I can't understand it, but some people believe that. Okay. So once you've decided you're going to have a company page, what are kind of the best practices? What do you need to do to make sure you're doing it right?
Yeah. So the one thing I'll let you know is that with LinkedIn, in order to set up a company page, they do require a URL-based email address, meaning not at gmail.com or at yahoo.com, right? Like you need like at thevertuccigroup.com email address. So that is, for better or worse, is step 1 for entrepreneurs, is that they have their own website and that they have an email address that's associated to that where they can confirm, because otherwise anybody anywhere could be setting up a company page for anything, right? So that's sort of like a verification point for LinkedIn, is that your business page matches your business email. And once that's in place, you set up your company page, and it's pretty limited for the free company page. And I'm not by any means recommending the paid company page, but it's a little limited on the information. You really just put your title, the about us, the URL, and you kind of set up a company profile like you would your personal profile. Pretty simple. You can upload a logo, and it's pretty sparse. That's about as much as you can do, but that's where you get started, is you talk about your products and services, you share your URL for your website, you upload your logo. From there, once the basics are in place, it becomes about your content strategy, which we're also going to talk about today.
Okay. So, I mean, once you have that done, what are some of the mistakes that people make with their company page?
I would say that they set it up and they forget about it. It's one mistake that I see. They don't do anything with it. But it's really the main mistake that I see is people not setting it up, not uploading. Once they do set it up, not having any sort of imagery. Like I see a lot of like just small businesses and entrepreneurs and small business owners that have gone as far as setting up a company page, but then don't update, don't upload a current logo and don't make sure that their website is accurate and don't talk about the products and services that they offer. So there's a lot of things I see people doing wrong and mistakes that I make, but it's all very simple stuff that like the company page is not that complicated. If you just make sure you're checking all the boxes, you're going to be in really good shape.
Okay. So we once you've got your personal profile up and your company profile, what is the next important step you need to be doing on LinkedIn?
So I would say that there's two, and one is about your business relationships and connecting with people, and the second is about content. I think it might make sense to talk a little bit about content since we're talking about the company page. Do you agree?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about content.
So this is sort of the secret sauce of LinkedIn is around content, how they distribute content, how they engage, how people engage with your content. I'm not going to say it's significantly different than every other social platform. It's quite similar. But as an entrepreneur in 2018, I'm going to make an assumption if you're trying to gain clients and be successful in the online space, that you have some sort of content strategy. You're either writing a weekly blog, you're doing video content, you're doing lead generation, you're doing something. If you're not, you might be getting business in a totally different way, which we can talk about with our one-to-one relationship piece. But most of us, that's what we're doing. We're focused on content and creating content, getting out into the world. When you have your company page set up, you can share that content on your company page, just like you would on your Facebook company page. You can use hashtags, you can tag people in it, all of those things. And the things that help it get into distribution and get in front of people's eyeballs are really the keywords that are in the post and the hashtags that you use. So the one thing that LinkedIn, because of all the data and because of all the content and the keywords, they do a really good job at feeding relevant content to our members. I mean, you're a member. I know that you don't log in all of the time, like most of our members, but when you're on there, would you agree that most of the articles and things that are being fed up to you are related to you and what you do?
Yeah, although I have to admit, because, I think the algorithms are in a lot of ways still seeing my old content that I used to be putting out, which is slightly different than what I'm doing now. So, I'm seeing stuff that was probably more relevant to me 2 years ago and a year and a half ago than now, but it definitely is relevant. And I see why I'm seeing that stuff.
Right. And that's true for members too. And so the way that we feed content to people, we're looking at their profile, the keywords and titles that are in their profile, and any hashtags that they've selected, because every single member can choose to follow content on entrepreneurship or on coaching, consulting, speaking, whatever it is that they're looking to learn more about, they can follow that content. So basically we're just matching, whether it's like the content or the job post or whatever, it's like a keyword to keyword matching algorithm. Mm-hmm. And what's great for us as entrepreneurs is that means that our ideal clients are already sort of automatically set up to receive content about the things that they've listed on their profile. And so if we can just be thinking about member profiles as a way of doing some data and some research to understand our ideal client, understand the keywords that they're using, understand how they're presenting themselves, then we can incorporate that into our content posts and know that it's going to get some good traction through the keywords we're using and the hashtags that we're using.
Okay, good. And so what kind of content should you be putting out on LinkedIn, and how is it going to differ from the content you're putting out on other social media sites?
Yes. So I think that most other social media sites right now, I'm going to speak specifically about Instagram and Facebook and things that I think a lot of us are taught to use on the day in and day out as business owners. It's a little bit more, in my opinion, like a lifestyle nowadays. Like people are buying into you as a personal brand, a professional brand. They care about your products and services, but you see a lot of people posting content about the travel that they're doing, their lifestyle that they have, their family. And that's very compelling and people engage with that.
Right.
You don't see a lot of that on LinkedIn and it's not really the same platform. I would look at influencers and entrepreneurs that you really respect that are big names that are on LinkedIn. And they're all on there. I mean, Richard Branson's on there, Oprah Winfrey's on there, Gary Vaynerchuk is on there. So anyone that you're looking at, the way that they're posting their content, it's their same message, it's their same brand, but it's more to the point and kind of professional in the way that they're executing it. It doesn't have all of that personal fluff, which I don't think is fluff. I mean, I think people do care about us as a brand and want to know those things, but it's not the right platform for that. So for me, if I'm taking a picture of something in my life, sort of like lifestyle, I'm going to use Instagram for that, or I might use Facebook for that, but I'm probably not going to post that on LinkedIn. LinkedIn are going to be my training videos, promoting my webinars, my obviously lead generation and sort of free content that I'm giving to entrepreneurs and career professionals. So thinking about the audience on LinkedIn and what they're looking for, you just want to keep it related to the products and services that you offer, but keep it content rich and not so much of the personal element. And the one thing I'll add real quick is that video being native to LinkedIn is new in 2018. And so for right now, video content is the organic reach for me in my own experience, but the numbers show it as well, can be anywhere from 10 to 20 times the organic reach of video on other platforms because it's new. So I'm not talking about paid reach, I'm talking about organic reach, but I will tell you that when I post a video across all of, you and I have talked about like Facebook, that's what you're taught to do as an entrepreneur. I've been doing Facebook for years as an entrepreneur. I can post one, a training video, like a quick 5-minute tip of the day type thing. And I have more followers on Facebook and more engagement, but my video views will be 1/10 what they are on LinkedIn. And I haven't been putting as much entrepreneurial, effort into LinkedIn until 2018. And so I think this is the time if video is your jam and you really like to create video content, I would encourage you to explore what that looks like on LinkedIn.
Great. You just put something on my to-do list. Thanks, Rebecca. No, but I do have a question on that. So when you say native to, does that mean like doing something like a live, or is it just uploading a video that you've already recorded?
You can do both on LinkedIn now. And it used to be that you could only share a YouTube link or a Vimeo link up until the start of this year.
Okay. But so now you can literally just upload a video and you can do that directly?
Yeah, I do pre-recorded videos. I like lives, but I will just record a video, a piece of content, and I will share it across LinkedIn, Facebook, and IGTV, like my on-the-go type videos. I have more curated professional videos that I put on YouTube. But yeah, if it's sort of like a tip of the day or like a motivational thing, I put it across all 3 platforms, but I get a lot more views and engagement on LinkedIn than I do the other 2.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned IGTV. That's a discussion for a whole nother day.
That's another episode for another day.
But yeah, so I like what you're saying. Other than video though, yeah. Is it links? I mean, how long should a post be? Should it be a link to something, or should you be writing a big long post on LinkedIn itself?
I think that linking to the tools and resources that you already have, like your lead page or your website or your webinar opt-in, is totally fine. I don't think that you have to recreate the wheel. You're already doing this. I think, though, you want the post content to not just be the URL and you're driving them. I think you want to have a few sentences, probably like 200 to 400 characters that explain why I'm going to click on your link. Why are you, if I'm going to leave LinkedIn and go look at your webinar opt-in, and why am I doing that? And so that really comes down to understanding your ideal client and understanding what they're looking for on LinkedIn. And one thing we haven't really talked about, we've kind of mentioned ideal client a few times, is I do think regardless of what product or service you're selling, your ideal client probably is on LinkedIn, but how they're engaging, what they're looking for might be a little bit different. This is a professional site for them. They're coming here maybe when they're on work or part of their job. So just thinking about what would resonate, I do think the post content, like the 200 to 400 characters, is very different on LinkedIn than it is on Facebook or Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so let me ask you, I was having a thought while you we're talking about posting. So on Facebook, maybe I do, but I don't even know if I post invites to my webinar or anything like that on my page. Maybe I do, but on Twitter I used to, but those I know the half-life is next to nothing. So those are going to just disappear. Is that also true on LinkedIn? So if I post an invite to my webinar today, how long are people likely to be seeing that?
It does have longer shelf life on LinkedIn because we keep things in the feed longer because people are not logging in every day. They're logging in a couple times a week. And so I tell people to keep things, to kind of lead up to stuff. Like, if it's today, I wouldn't post it today. I would post it maybe 3 to 4 days in advance because you're going to get a longer tail end on LinkedIn than you are on other platforms.
Okay, but I guess here's my question. I'll ask you directly because I think this is probably, I know there are a lot of folks out there doing weekly or every other week type of webinars.
Right.
Should they be posting every week an invite, or is it going to keep coming back up?
I wouldn't do the same post every single week over and over and over again. Okay. I would, if you're doing a weekly webinar, or, even if it's a different type of lead generation, even if it's like a PDF, like opt-in, I would do weekly posts, but I would make them a little bit different each time because if people end up finding you and coming to your company page and that's the first, engagement that they're having with you, and it's just post after post after post of the same thing, that's not like the best experience. Right. So just thinking of other creative ways to capture someone's attention in that 200 to 400 characters. And I mean, not that that's a limitation by any means, you can certainly do something longer, but I would keep it fresh, but keep driving to the URL where you have people opt in. But so post consistently, post weekly. I mean, we tell people at LinkedIn to think about daily posts, but you don't want the daily posts to be the same thing every single day. At the minimum, I would say an entrepreneur should be doing 2 to 3 posts a day. And it's the same type of information and content regurgitated in a few different kinds of ways, but you're keeping it fresh and different so it doesn't look exactly the same every single time.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and that's what I thought. I thought, for Twitter, for example, it used to be, and they changed their rules, but it used to be that you were going to post the exact same thing over and over again because nobody ever looked at all your tweets. And so I thought it would probably be different on LinkedIn. And let me ask you this. So you think, I should be posting from my business page on this stuff rather than my personal profile?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that because I just wrote a note for myself to make sure I came back to that. Yes. So my advice is to post on your on your company page. So post the video, post the link, whatever you're doing on your business page. Okay. Then you can share it out to your personal network. Okay. But it's sort of like Facebook that by doing it, by having it as the company page and then sharing it out as the personal person, you can track the engagement and there is paid advertising on LinkedIn. So if you wanted to target people or retarget people or track your analytics, you can only do that from your company page.
Yeah. And since you mentioned advertising, my understanding is that on average, advertising on LinkedIn will be more expensive per conversion than on Facebook. Is that the case?
I would say significantly more expensive. I think Facebook is running the show on affordable advertising for small businesses and entrepreneurs. What I'll say is, if your ideal client is like a C-suite, an executive, somebody who is on LinkedIn and active, or sales professionals or recruiters, people that are sort of the key demographic on LinkedIn, I would consider the investment, but I would work with the professional marketing team at LinkedIn because there's an amazing thing with the targeting that LinkedIn can do that is very different than Facebook and Instagram, but it is sort of like that corporate level investment that they're really aiming at right now. And so it's a harder thing for us starting out to really invest in, but I've played around with it and the quality of leads that I get are very high from LinkedIn, but you have to be playing with a little bit bigger budget for sure. Yeah.
I mean, and I've forgotten who it was, but I heard someone who is a LinkedIn like advertising specialist talk about, and I don't remember what the number was that he gave, but his suggestion was essentially your offer has to be a higher priced offer before it's going to make sense to use LinkedIn, just because you're going to pay more at every step. So, okay. So we've talked content. Now I think that brings us to the last piece, which is the kind of building and improving your personal or professional relationships. How do you do that?
I think this is personally really the secret sauce of LinkedIn. I think everything else we've talked about is super important. And as a business owner today, you have to be putting your content where your people are and doing all the things that we talked about. But the thing that's most underutilized that people don't really think about from a LinkedIn perspective is your ability to reach out to people directly and build one-to-one relationships. Again, as entrepreneurs, we're sort of taught to scale. We're taught to get a bunch of followers. We're taught about conversion rates and likes and all of these things. But the reality is people hire people. It's about people, and it's about the relationships that we have with people. And so where I see people and entrepreneurs having the most success on LinkedIn is really having a specific sales strategy that involves one-to-one reach out and relationship building. And I think even your guest on your episode number 12 talked about this, about social selling and building relationships and private messages and requests and all of that. But that is really the piece that I think as entrepreneurs, we're a little afraid to do, but it's really easy to do and much easier to do on LinkedIn than anywhere else, because you can use the data from member profiles to run really robust searches and find people in a way that you cannot do anywhere else. And then message them directly and communicate to them and see how you can serve them and see how you can help them. And this isn't something that we're really taught to do in entrepreneurship. We're really taught about the brand and the content and all of that. But at the end of the day, people hire people. And so thinking through how you can build professional business relationships in your business, whether that's collaborative relationships, affiliate selling relationships, or just directly reaching out to your ideal clients, I think is the key to success on LinkedIn and how people are making the most money from their businesses on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I guess I'm partly confused by that because, I will have people who send me those things. I guess it's the sponsored in-mails, and I pretty much always reject them. Or, I'll have people who, because I have a law firm, they will connect with me and then immediately try to sell me something. And, that kind of turns me off, but I think they're doing it wrong is the problem.
Correct. Yes, they are.
So how do you do it right?
I think for the average entrepreneur who's like a solopreneur or has a small team, it's about really reaching out to people with the genuine intent of networking and connecting and learning from one another. So where I have success is Bobby, exactly what you're saying. Like, you don't want to connect with somebody and then, hey, I offer this. Do you want to buy it? Right. It's more like, why are you reaching out to that person? What about their background was interesting to you? And do you want to set up some time to talk and see how we might be able to beneficially help one another in our businesses or in our careers? And so for me, I teach a lot about sort of in-mail messaging and best practices, both on the corporate side with my corporate clients as an employee of LinkedIn, but also on the sales side for entrepreneurs. And it is all about that authentic messaging, really reaching out to people for the right reasons and making it about the real relationship and the connection and not about trying to sell. And I know that sounds like a longer sales cycle, but the reality is if you get connected with even 5 or 10 like really amazing people in your industry, that can change the trajectory of your entire business. And so how you think about building those relationships is, to me, in my opinion, the key to success.
Yeah, it seems to me I could see using that more, and I think you mentioned it, to find affiliate relationships and things like that. I could see building connections with people through that who maybe there's a reason why they might want to promote my products. And that is a longer sales cycle in a sense, but it's worth it.
Yeah. And the other thing, and I think that's 100% how I think about using it. I do a lot of corporate I sell into corporations, different workshops and coaching and training. And so obviously getting connected with people who work within those corporations. But when I think about my career coaching and sort of my one-to-one business, I also think about just the idea of referrals. So a lot of times when I'm sending messages on LinkedIn, the person that I'm reaching out to might be my ideal client. They might be that career transitioner who really does need to hire me. But instead of trying to sell myself to them, because we have a relationship, I'll just see if they have any referrals, anyone they know that they think could benefit from my classes, my workshops, my coaching. And just because I'm asking them, like, people want to help people. If you have a relationship, they'll be thinking of you in that light. And they may or may not make referrals, but they might send your stuff to somebody, or they might read that and go, oh, well, I'm that person. I would love to talk to you about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all great advice. So I think that's what we need to be doing. When we want to execute this strategy of building relationships, kind of walk me through, how am I going to do it? What's the best way to do that to get the maximum out of it?
I think the step one is really doing some research. So running some robust searches, looking for people, because I think that often surprises people how robust our system is and how easy it is to find people that are either like you or parallel to you or are your ideal client. Because again, you're able, it's not just their behavior, right? Like there's all kinds of things that you can search on to get connected with people. So I would do some research, kind of understand the platform, maybe look at some of the groups, see which groups are active, what people are talking about, kind of step one, doing some research. Then when you kind of get your intuition and aha moment of who you might want to be connecting with, step two is really about sending some strong connection requests and messages that are authentic about building relationships. And so, you might do that whole connection request and just say, hey, I'm really interested in building relationships with affiliate marketers. Your background looks really interesting to me. Maybe we should talk. And you send that connection request and they're going to accept it or not. And if they do, then you keep the conversation going and kind of drive the communication and drive the relationship.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I think that's the missing piece is, to me, I've never tried to do that, finding other people that I don't know. I've always pretty much only tried to connect with people that I'm connected with some way, somehow. So you're suggesting use it, search, find people you'd like to connect with and try to connect with them.
Yeah. And, I'll give a story there. Like when I was starting out a few years ago, I was doing online classes, and there are a lot of people that do online classes on similar topics to me that I had like girl business crushes on that I was like, what are they doing? Like I just really admired. I either had read their book or seen their content. I used LinkedIn to reach out to them and introduce myself and get phone calls set up and just really learn from them and pick their brain. And granted, not every entrepreneur or business owner wants to do that, but I think I was really authentic in coming across like, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm really impressed with you and what you've been doing. Would really love to learn from you. And I even think about that in context, of you and I, Bobby. And I think we both follow obviously Amy Porterfield and listen to her podcast, and Marie Forleo and all of them. And they all have been friends for a long time and know each other and help each other out. And got started in very similar ways. Like I remember a specific episode that Marie did for Marie TV where she talked about some really specific messages she sent to influencers and people that she was impressed by, not necessarily even to just pick their brain, but to offer them help and services. And here's how I can connect you. And here's what I can do for you. And so to me, I just think that looking for people that you don't know, that you aren't connected to, like you said, people are not doing that. They're not thinking about using LinkedIn in that way. And I think that's the most powerful way that entrepreneurs can be using LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm thinking about it just through this conversation, I think people are, like in my experience, people are doing that when they're literally trying to sell to me. And I think that is not going to be effective, at least for me.
Correct.
But if someone reached out to me and was like, hey, I'd like to connect with you because I think we could find a way to work together to, and it's more of a mutual, something like that, I would definitely be open to that. So I think that's a good strategy. So,
and I think about you and your podcast and me and my YouTube channel. And a lot of times when I'm reaching out to people that I would like to be featured on their podcast, I also offer to interview them for my YouTube channel so that we're doing cross promotion and cross collaboration. And so it's sort of like, these are the people I would really like to be connected to. And these are the reasons why, but don't make it just about you, make it about what you can offer them as well. And really think about authentic relationship and what that means for you as an entrepreneur and who those key influencers and connectors can be for you and really approach it from that perspective. And I would say we spend a lot of time as entrepreneurs doing a lot of things in our business. So people might be listening to this and be like, oh, I don't have the time for that. I would argue that you don't have the time not to do this because you're doing so many other things in your business that are sort of hit or miss when it comes to content and whether or not people see them. And it's great. And it's all stuff that we need to be doing. But this you're going to have a much higher return on your value building these business relationships and finding clients and doing all of the things that are possible on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got to be honest. I now, just from this conversation, I'm not sure you've gotten me off my rear end. I hope you have. But the reason why I say that is because since I launched my, kind of template forms, I've had a ton of web developers, people who develop, websites for people come to me and want to, refer people to me for my legal template forms for the websites. And so this seems like an obvious thing. I should do searches on LinkedIn, find these people and just reach out to them and say, hey, if you want to have this as, service to your clients where you can help them, hey, I can help you with that. And so, I have to figure out how to word it and how to do it. But it seems like something that, is kind of a no-brainer. And spending, say, 15 minutes a day on that for, a few weeks and testing it out seems like a good idea.
Yeah, because that's you sort of tapping into the fact that there are a lot of people in the world that serve entrepreneurs and serve your ideal client, but they're not offering exactly what you offer. And so partnering together and helping each other out, that's just how business gets done in the world,
Yep. So, I've gotten something out of this, so I want to thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to add before we leave the subject of kind of this issue of reaching out and building these relationships? Have I missed anything?
No, I think of relationship building, I think we covered it.
Okay. And I think we've hit all your tips.
Correct.
So I'm going to close in a second, but I've got to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests. And that's, I like to think in digestible, easy to follow steps. Yeah. So what is something that my listeners could do in either 5 minutes a day or that they could accomplish by the end of the week to really start to kind of up their LinkedIn game?
Love that question because I agree with you 100%. You're not going to do all of these things at once and master LinkedIn tomorrow. Yep. I always tell my clients spend, 10 minutes a day, 3 days a week, and you could do a lot more than you think you could do. Mm-hmm. But I would say that, the first, if you're going to walk away from this podcast with anything, doing your first step, I would spend time, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, a couple days this week, and really get that profile to a place that you're really proud of. Because you'll be surprised of who might find you just because you have the right keywords and you've presented yourself and spoke to your ideal client in a way that they've been waiting to find somebody like you. And finally they did.
Okay, well, let me ask you. So I think that's right. You got to get that done first. But then let me ask you a triage question.
Yeah.
If someone can only focus on either putting out the content or doing the reaching out, which one do you think is more important?
Relationship building.
Okay. So you would say that's still the most important thing.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fantastic. And, I want to thank you for all the great advice, Rebecca. How can my listeners get in touch with you to learn more about whether it's your courses or services or how you might be able to help them?
Well, I am on this platform called LinkedIn.
I'm stunned by that.
But no, so I obviously have my own personal profile. I'm happy to connect with people. Rebecca Vertucci. Our company has the Vertucci Group company page. That is also our website. So the vertuccigroup.com. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. So hopefully just by typing in that last name, you can find me anywhere.
Yeah. And we'll have links to all that in the show notes, listeners. So you'll definitely find it there. Rebecca,
and I'm all about being where my people are. So wherever you're comfortable and you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to help.
Yeah. And Rebecca, I just want to say thank you because this has been fantastic. I finally feel like maybe I know what I need to do on LinkedIn. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, I feel like you and I are going to see each other in August. So I'm going to be asking you how far you've come. So maybe if that lights the fire, then I've done my job today. Great.
Now I do have to do it. So but thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you. It's been wonderful. Now, listeners, that's it for now. Stay tuned for the quick legal lesson after the break.
And now for today's legal lesson.
Yay! Hey there. Now, that interview with Rebecca was great. And I have to be honest, I'm recording this legal lesson a good long while after I did that interview. You probably heard her refer to us getting together in August. And that was for an event that, as I'm recording this, happened a couple of weeks ago. We did the interview with her during the summer, and it's going to come out now in September. I got to tell you, Rebecca had some great value. And I have to be honest with you, I didn't meet my deadline of getting stuff done by the time I went to the event, but I'm working on it. So I hope you'll take her advice and really start implementing the parts of her advice that work for your business on LinkedIn. Again, I'm a believer that we can't be everywhere. There's no way that we can do that. It doesn't make sense. We have to pick the places we're going to spend most of our time. But we should have a presence, at least, in just about all the social media outlets. And I think LinkedIn is one that's important for us if we work with or in any way interact with folks who are in a professional setting. And that's going to be most all of us. So I think it's an important lesson that she taught. Now, in today's legal lesson, I'm going to address something that's not specific to LinkedIn, but is actually something that came to my attention because I saw someone post a question. They tagged me in a Facebook group I'm in. And the question was something like this. This woman had been doing Facebook Lives and wanted to know, could she take that content, those videos, did she own them or did Facebook own them? So could she take those videos and put them somewhere else? And it was a good question. And I think it's a question that a lot of people have. And I wanted to start by saying the first thing to do when you have that question is you should look at the terms of service or the terms of use for the social networks. And the reason why this question comes up, candidly, is because in the old days, this was something that Facebook claimed to actually own the stuff that you posted there. And so in the old days, it really was something that you said, oh, hey, if I post that there, I'm actually going to be losing the rights to do that. But that has changed. So here's what Facebook's terms of service say right now as I'm recording this. It says you own the content you create and share on Facebook and other Facebook products you use, and nothing in these terms takes away the rights you have to your own content. Now, LinkedIn has similar language in its terms. So the good news is that under at least the terms of the service for the different social networks I've looked at this point in 2018, they are very clear and very explicit. You own the content that you post on social media. What you are doing is you are giving a license, is what it's called, to the social network, and then also to all of their users to use it consistent with their terms of use. And so what you're saying is, hey, Facebook, you can use this and you don't have to pay me anything. You don't have to do anything, but I still own it. And that's true on LinkedIn, and that's true on every other social network I've looked at recently. But if you have a question, take a look at their terms of use. There will normally be a section that's about the permission you're giving them. And that's where it will have this statement that says you own the content, you're simply giving them permission. So the upshot of this and the importance of this is you don't have to worry about doing something wrong when it comes to, using the content you post on social media. That's still yours. You can post it across multiple social networks. You can post it on a social network, then pull it off and use it elsewhere, etc. You don't have to worry about that. You have the rights. You still own it. So I hope that gives you a little bit of peace of mind, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've got a great episode coming up next week, so I hope you tune in, and I hope you've been enjoying this. And if you have, please subscribe to make sure you get each one of these episodes, whether it's on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever service it is that you're using to listen to this now. Go ahead and click subscribe. That way you don't miss anything, and you'll make sure to get all the future episodes. Until next week, this is Bobby Klink signing off.
Thanks for listening, and remember to visit mistakes.youronlinegenius.com to get your essential guide to the 4 legal mistakes that can doom your business and how to avoid them. Join us next week for another episode to expand your online genius and your success.